And there you have it. Now, I got up extra early this morning thinking I'm going to get a test ride on this and see if we made progress the other day with Luciano and with the things that we did. Well, the weather didn't seem to agree with that, so we're going to have to make an alternative plan. But luckily, when you have a small collection of very old motorcycles, there's always something to keep you busy. There's no such thing as I have nothing to do today. So what I'm going to try to do today is make an alternative plan. I originally start out, and this is the way pretty much every day goes, I start out thinking, I'll get that test ride in. I'll know if I've got to do the coils. Ray has the coils already sent from Florida. They'll be here in a couple days. My head is spinning with RD stuff, and then I realize, well, I'm not going to have the whole day to work out here today. Karen has some things she wanted me to do. The farm is calling. We have the kids coming over, among other things. So, but I do have a couple hours, and so I thought one of the things I could do today, I have the tire for the 750 already mounted on a wheel. I can at least swap the wheel out today and be one step ahead. But the first thing I have to do every morning is have my coffee and take care of the farm and the fish and the birds and the worms and the antelopes. It's a busy life. So before it starts raining, I've got to move the motorcycles around in the garage. I wanted to get the bikes in place so I could work on them even if it starts pouring later. Now it always seems on days like today I'm trying to beat the rain. I'm trying to move bikes around. I've spent half of my life being a parking lot attendant, getting things prepped up. So with all of that done, the objective is to get this right underneath the electric come along, and that'll make that a little bit easier. We got the fans on trying to get some cool air out here, but again, it's been really hot the last couple of days, and yesterday we really sweated it out in the garage. So everything in the garage is done. We're ready. Now I don't care if it rains for the rest of the day. I've got the tire up there on the rack mounted, ready to swap the wheels. This should be a relatively straightforward job, but I do like to clean everything out. I'll check the brake puck wear, among other things, and when we're done, what the whole objective of this is, this tire wore very unevenly. It's a very hard thing to show on video, but it's got some wonky wear pattern on one side. This, and I don't remember which way it was steering funny, but the tire does have 4,000 miles on it, so maybe it's maybe I still have another 1,000 miles left on it. I don't know. It's a Pirelli Sport Demon, and I've had probably 10 of them in the time I've had this bike, and this is the first bad one. Now, truth in advertising is my first choice always is Michelin tires. I've always been thinking that they were better for what I needed, and when I got this bike, Michelin didn't make a set of tires that were appropriate. I took somebody else's recommendation, the Sport Demons. They worked great. I had a set of Bridgestones on them. They were almost as good, but I always went back to the Pirelli Sport Demon. They were always the ones that I liked the best. Now again, truth in advertising, I've had several different sets on the GS Suzuki, always the Michelins. The Michelins always seem to be, especially the Michelin front, seems to give it, I think, the best handling. And on the sport bike rims, the Pilot Power 2s are really, I think, they suit my needs the best, and they do seem to last, and they have just great handling. And Vlad was the one who talked me into trying these Angel Pirellis. I don't have one mounted on the back yet. We probably got another 1,000 miles left on that. That's a Pilot Power 2 in the back, but the Angel front tire, rock solid handling. So I guess what the bottom line is, all of these modern tires are good. On a previous video, I had already mounted up the brand new tire on the rim, balanced it, it's ready to go, so that would make today a relatively easy day. So with everything prepped up, I can go have my final cup of coffee for the morning and get out here and get started. And it looks like the rain is going to be here any minute. You know, we always wonder whenever there's a storm and you can see the clouds are already rolling in. Whenever there's a storm predicted, that we lose some plants, especially the tall ones, and I always put that umbrella down because we've had that umbrella wind up in a neighbor's yard. And pretty much every morning now, Karen has fresh cut flowers on our kitchen table. When we're having breakfast, there's just an unlimited supply of these, thanks to Nanda Navola. I always try to pay a little tribute to the people like Nanda that have started us on the path to what has amounted to be a great hobby that makes our summer very interesting. And there's almost no part of our yard now that isn't filled with flowers, basically zinnias. Wow. Now, I wanted some truth in advertising. We have these two clear earth I call them buzzers though, but it seems like this is the heavy duty one, this is the kind of intermediate one. But what's happened is it's totally eliminated the groundhog issue in our garden. And we know the groundhog, there's still groundhogs here. We see them in the driveway, but you never see them by the plants. So that's good information. Clean Earth, E-R-T-H. And we have had a groundhog issue, but that has really solved it. And I always like to I actually passed that on, that information, to my doctor who has a deer issue in his backyard. I just never get sick of looking at these flowers. They add a nice little dimension to my life. And usually once a year I make a video just of the garden. Karen and I do kind of a perp walkie thing and make a video we send out to our friends. Well, we haven't done that yet this year, but it's coming. And all I need is one more cup of coffee and I'll be ready to start that wheel change. And of course, if I forget to feed the birds, they do poop on my car. If I feed them, they poop on my car. If I take the bird feeder down, they poop on my car. This is such a nice way to start off the day with fresh cut flowers. So the first order of business is get the winch up and get the front end light. Now, more truth in advertising. I got this from Harbor Freight. They were on sale for $75. I didn't know if I'd ever get my money's worth out of it. Since I got this, I've used it so many times. And we're going to use it on Luciano's lowering link that we're going to do next week. On a ZX10, this thing is worth its weight in gold. Now I want to get the front end so the tire is just not spinning. I've got the weight off the motorcycle for now. And with that sitting just like that, it's a lot easier to loosen all the bolts on the calipers and everything. Just makes it a little bit easier. So because all the bolts are Loctited on the front end, they're always a little bit draggy when you go to take them out. Once I have these bolts out, before I put them back, I'll run them on a polishing wheel, clean them up a little bit. They're always a little bit oxidized. And of course, get fresh Loctite on them. Now I need to get some either string or zip ties or whatever to basically just hold the calipers up out of the way. I just want to get them up out of the way. Just makes working on the front end just a little bit easier. So with the one zip tie, I can hold that up out of the way, so it just makes it now easier to pull the front wheel. I know there are people, and I've seen them do it, that can put the front wheel back on with the two calipers there and wiggle it in. And well, maybe if you're a professional mechanic, I find this to be an easy thing, and I think it's a good tip. Now at this point, the front wheel is still on the ground. I can't spin the wheel. It's going to make loosening up all the other bolts. This has to be loosened, and then we have to pull the axle. Now, loosening these bolts, everything's Loctited, so it's a little bit draggy, but it's a good safety thing. And these just have to be loose right now. Okay, now we're ready to just pull the axle. And once this is all loose, and I'll pick the front end up further off the ground and pull the axle, the wheel should come right off. I just want the front wheel far enough off the ground so I can change the wheel. Once I pull the axle, that wheel will come off. Make it very easy. And what I'm doing is holding the weight of the wheel with the bottom of my feet while I tap the axle out. Once you get to that point, if it's your lucky day, you can just take the weight off the wheel Looks like we need a longer screwdriver. Since all the screwdrivers are green, I always get confused. There we go. Now, if you have a wheel where there's a different spacer on each side, you've got to be aware of which way it went in. In this case, we don't, because there's a speedometer on one side. And we've got to account for that. Pull that off. And there you have it. Now once that's completely off, I want to clean that wheel up, put a good coat of wax on it, because that's going to be in storage. Now what we're doing, of course, it's always an evil twin. Everything's an evil twin. When it comes time to do the back tire, I'll put the black wheel on the back with a new tire. In the meantime, I'll have one black and one green wheel, probably for 1,000 miles, or maybe for part of the summer. But it doesn't matter to me, because having this wheel all prepped up right now, if I didn't do this, I would have to change a tire, and it's 90 degrees. I don't want to change a tire. I want to get this done as soon as possible. And this kind of prepping up ahead of time when you have an extra set of wheels makes your life a lot easier. I checked the calipers. You have plenty of meat on the pads, so we don't have to replace the pads. This is always a good time to do a good inspection of it, though. Now, nothing, a little coat of spray wax. I'll keep this from, well, just maintain the finish that we've already put on it, hopefully. And since there's never an end to the amount of tires you have to change, if you don't have to change tires, well, probably you're not getting enough riding in. You got to reevaluate your lifestyle. Actually, every time I do a set of tires, I think, wow, I got my money's worth out of them. Now this one, to be true, to be honest, and I always try to pass on honest information, even though sometimes it's kind of, well, it seems like it's meaningless. This tire wore very unevenly. Now I'll be real disappointed if the new tire starts wearing unevenly, because I have no clue, to be honest, why it was wearing the way it was. But it's certainly, it's a funky thing. I don't know if you sure can't see it. You can feel it right away. You go, whoa, what's that? And I don't know what causes that, to be honest. And the handling gets wonky very quickly, and then as soon as it's wonky, it gets exponentially worse, and you wonder what the hell's going on. Did I forget how to ride? You go into a corner and it's like it's on gumballs or something. Wonky. Wonky is a good word. Now, that's, in my opinion, or whatever the hell my opinion is worth, especially if you're gambling, probably nothing. Nothing you could do to a motorcycle to make it handle better is more important than getting a good set of tires on and replacing them before they get wonky. Because once they get wonky, and especially when the back one gets squared off, you always feel like you're falling off a cliff when you start pushing it. And if you're not pushing it, what's the point of riding? I mean, you may as well, you know, get a more sedentary hobby. Anyway, this is pretty clean now. I'm going to put this up on a shelf, go get the other one, swap them out. And by having that tire, the day that we did that tire and got that tire all mounted up, we bought that this day is going to be a very easy day. The ultimate luxury, the tires are already mounted, ready to go, balanced, all set to go. Well, it looks like we made a good corporate decision by not going out for a ride, because it's pouring right now. It's raining and the sky's getting cloudier by the minute. So, good day to do the maintenance. Now, another little small maintenance item while I have this apart. It's always a good idea to clean off any residual dirt that's around the speedometer drive. And in this case, I'll take a little wheel bearing grease. Just go down in there where the two prongs are, where they rub. Just cheap insurance. I'm sure if you don't do this at some point in time, you need to buy one of these. Now, another small detail I always do when I have things apart, these bolts, you really only see the surface of them, but to clean them up and just run them, it takes a minute. And at least the next time you take them apart, and of course we'll clean them and put fresh Loctite on all of the front end bolts. I like to have everything on the front end Loctited solid. And even this part, the part that you see, clean that up as good as I can. So the next step on this is, before I put anything together, I want to clean these parts up as much as possible on a polishing wheel. And I always look at them and I think, well, yeah, you could just put them back. I'm sure most people just put them back. But yeah, I always feel better if they're clean. I got all the old Loctite off of them, and they're like brand new bolts. So now here's the question I always ask. Which bolt do you think you'd like to have on your motorcycle? Or, hey, you could have the totally stock one. I don't think there's much of a decision for me, so I will spend the time and get all that hardware better than new. Even the spacers that are rusted, yeah, you could put that right back on the bike, but when it's cleaned up, I just feel a little bit better. Just a little bit nicer. And if you make every little part of the bike just a little bit nicer, in the end, it's a nicer bike. Now, with all that hardware all cleaned up, that to me is time well spent. That'll make working on a bike just a little nicer, and next time I have to take it apart, even nicer still. Okay, now putting this all back together, relatively straightforward. And usually the hardest part is to get the weight of the wheel, get your feet caught underneath it so you can get the weight of the wheel up. Get the one spacer that goes on, what's this spacer? Goes on this side. Sometimes you have to put a little bit of wheel bearing grease in there just to hold it in place sometimes. It looks like that's going to stay in there pretty well. We'll find out. Okay, so now we need to hook up the speedometer drive. And there's a notch in here that has to line up very accurately with that part. And when that lines up, we're good to go. Can be very tricky because you have to make sure this is lined up with that notch in there before you put the axle in all the way. Now once I know that that speedometer drive is in the correct notch and I've got the spacer on the other side in the right position and started in the other side, I can just carefully tap this in and the rest of it will get sucked in by... Now here's another tip. Once that's in, I can tighten this bolt. And that keeps this tight while I'm putting on the nut on the other side. And this pinches the axle. So just tight enough that it keeps it from spinning when I put the nut on. So once I cut the zip tie here, now if these pads are not too squeezed together, this should go right on, which it does, lucky me. And we can get our brand new bolts with a drop of Loctite on them. You don't need a lot of Loctite. One drop is enough. And once these are in, and the other side can be tricky, a little bit tricky, because you have that speedometer drive in the way. You got to kind of wiggle it, and that's why I'm always real careful not to break or scratch the rim. Yes, I don't like having scratched rims, that's for sure. And by the way, this bike really has exceptional brakes. It's a great handling bike. And that's why even a little bit wonky on the front tire or the back tire, I just replace the tire. It's just worth it because the bike really does handle well. Now if it's our lucky day, we haven't squeezed these pads too much, and this will drop right on. But a lot of times you have to take the speedometer cable off. I don't know if we're going to have to do that. Let's see. Okay, so with that in place, assuming we haven't, looks like we have pinched the pads together. Let's open up the pads. See, anytime you put a kink in a line, you in essence squeeze the pads back together, and that becomes a real issue. But we could have just taken the cable off Maybe that would have been easier, who knows. All that's left now is just to lower it down. Make sure the side stand is down. And of course it's pouring rain out there now, so we can't take a quick ride, make sure everything's nice and tight or whatever. But it is, I think this will make the handling so much better. There's nothing like when the tires get all wonky and you try to get that last 1,000 miles out. If you just put a tire on, it's so much better. As the looker, we made a great decision not to go for a test ride today and get this done. I always like getting work done on a rainy day, knowing that when that sunny day comes, we're all set to go. So actually all that's left to do now is to reseat the pads. Be very careful first couple times you hit the brake on wet roads or whatever. They'll reseat very quickly, and get used to the idea that we have a black front wheel and a green back one until I get the black one mounted. But I'll do the same thing with the back wheel, as I'll have the tire roll mounted up and ready to go, so on a rainy day and it's done. And that's proven to be a good, a nice way for me to get a job done and not knock myself out. Today, if I had to change the tire too, extra work, and I can't work outside. So anyway, hope you did enjoy the video, and thank you to all the healthcare workers that have made all these rides and working on motorcycles and actually just being alive, not being in a hospital with tubes in you. So I really do appreciate it, and hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoy making them and sharing this little passion that I have for motorcycles, especially old rusty ones. Again, thanks for watching.